Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. I sat at the dinner table stirring my coffee as the clock ticked quietly on the kitchen wall. Natalie, my wife of 8 years, was across from me, swirling red wine in her glass, a little smirk playing on her lips. It was the same smug smile she'd worn more and more often lately, the one she thought I didn't notice. She leaned back in her chair, watching me closely. Then she said it as casually as if she were talking about the weather. "I'm done pretending, Derek," she said, almost cheerful. "I'm seeing someone. His name's James, and starting next week he'll be staying over sometimes." I set my cup down slowly. No reaction, no shouting, no scene. Natalie tilted her head, waiting. I could tell she thought she was about to watch me unravel. She wanted drama, tears, a desperate plea. Instead, I took a sip of coffee. "That's it?" she said after a few seconds, sounding almost annoyed. I wiped my mouth with a napkin. "Good to know," I said. Her smile faltered for a second. She hadn't expected calm. She hadn't prepared for silence. "You're really just okay with this?" she pushed. I stood up, taking my plate to the sink. "Natalie, you made your choice. Why would I get in your way?" I could feel her eyes burning into my back as I rinsed the plate. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The thing was, I already knew about James. I'd known for months. She thought she was playing a game. What she didn't know was that she had been playing it on a board I built. I wiped my hands on a towel and grabbed my keys. "Enjoy your evening," I said casually over my shoulder. Natalie said nothing as I walked out the door. And that was the last moment she ever thought she had the upper hand. When Natalie dropped her little confession, she thought she was dropping a bomb. Truth was, the bomb had already gone off months ago. She just hadn't realized she was standing in the wreckage. The first night I suspected something, I didn't confront her. I observed. Small things gave it away at first. Her phone glued to her hand, sudden late nights, at work, a fresh interest in spin classes she used to hate. I didn't accuse. I listened. I watched. I learned. By the time her lies piled high enough to touch the ceiling, I had already moved into the next phase. I installed a second security system, one she didn't know about. Cameras hidden so deep she could walk past them every day and never notice. Then I found him. James Turner, 36. Used to sell real estate before a couple fraud charges clipped his career. Now he bounced around from shady business to shady business, living paycheck to paycheck. Lucas helped too. We weren't close these days, but when you have someone's back in college, they don't forget. Lucas worked cybersecurity now, and he owed me a favor. In less than 2 days, he pulled everything. James's financial records, his sealed court documents, even a few confidential HR complaints he thought were buried. Natalie thought she was trading up. She didn't realize she was tying herself to an anchor. I didn't get mad. I didn't drink myself numb or punch walls. I made plans. I started moving funds out of our joint account, little by little, in ways she wouldn't notice. I made copies of everything: her texts, her emails, receipts from secret dinners and hotel rooms. She thought she was sneaking around behind my back. She didn't realize I was holding the leash. By the time she sat there smugly announcing James would be spending the night, she was already locked into a plan she couldn't escape. All that was left now was timing, and I was a very patient man. 2 nights later, I set the trap. I told Natalie I had an overnight business trip. She barely lifted her eyes from her phone to acknowledge me, already grinning down at the screen. Perfect. I packed a bag, tossed it into my car, and drove 3 miles away to a cheap motel. From there, I pulled up the live feed on my laptop, every angle of the house clear as day. At exactly 9:13 p.m., James pulled into the driveway. I sat back in the creaky motel chair, watching him step out of his car like he owned the place. A cheap bottle of wine in one hand, a cocky swagger in his step. Natalie opened the door, smiling wider than I'd seen in months. She kissed him like they were teenagers. Disgusting. They moved inside, laughing, touching, too comfortable already. Natalie poured them both wine, and they sank onto the couch, careless. I waited. Timing was everything. I needed them relaxed, unaware they were walking into a trap, vulnerable. At 10:05 p.m., I made the call through a back channel Lucas had with local law enforcement, a friend in private security who still kept ties with the department. I gave the tip anonymously. James Turner at my address, violating probation and known for prior fraud charges. Lucas's contact made sure it didn't get lost in the system. Once the call went through, the department sent a full team. At 10:27 p.m., flashing lights lit up the street. Natalie jumped up, knocking over her wine glass. James scrambled for his shoes. The door was kicked open seconds later. "James Turner, put your hands up and don't move." James froze, looking like a deer caught in a floodlight. Natalie screamed as two officers rushed in, tackling James to the ground. I closed my laptop carefully, picked up my motel key, walked outside into the cool night air and headed straight for my car. A few minutes later, I pulled into our street, just in time to see James being dragged out in cuffs. Natalie spotted me through the chaos, her face twisted in rage and panic. "You!" she screamed over the commotion. "You did this!" I parked the car slowly, stepped out, smoothed my jacket, and smiled. "Evening, Natalie." James was shoved into the back of a squad car, still shouting protests nobody cared about. I stood calmly by the curb, hands in my pockets, while Natalie stormed toward me, face flushed with fury. "You set him up," she hissed. "You're insane." I shrugged. "No, Natalie. I'm just better at the game than you." One of the officers walked past us carrying a small plastic bag, James's switchblade, pulled from his jacket. Natalie's face paled as she saw it. "You don't understand what you've done," she said, voice cracking. "James could go to prison." I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "He will go to prison. And you're just getting started." For the first time since she opened that front door, Natalie didn't have a quick comeback. She looked around, at the flashing lights, the neighbors peeking through curtains, the officers pulling evidence from James's car. Her dream life, the one she thought she was trading up for, was collapsing in real time. "You're ruining everything," she said in a small voice. I smiled coldly. "No, Natalie, you did that. I'm just making sure you can't lie about it afterward." She stepped back like she wanted to run, but where could she go? James was gone. The police were watching her. I was standing between her and the street. For the first time in months, I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. "You think this makes you better than me?" she spat finally, her pride flaring up for one last stand. I tilted my head slightly. "No, just smarter and more patient." An officer gave her a short nod, motioning her to step back while they wrapped up their report. She glanced at me over her shoulder, biting back whatever she wanted to say. I watched her retreat a few steps, silent. The queen of the house reduced to just another messy witness. The house was eerily quiet once the last squad car pulled away. Natalie sat on the couch, still clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. I stood by the window watching the street return to silence. "You happy now?" she snapped finally, her voice raw. I turned toward her slowly. "Not yet." She jumped to her feet. "You can't just destroy people's lives because you're hurt." I gave a short laugh. "Natalie, you destroyed your own life. I'm just speeding up the process." She shoved her phone at me. "I'll call a lawyer. I'll take half of everything. You think you're smart, but you're not untouchable." I crossed the room and picked up an envelope from the side table, dropped it on the coffee table in front of her. She hesitated, then grabbed it. Her eyes darted across the pages and then widened. You can't be serious," she whispered. "Prenup," I said simply. "You signed it. You remember, right? Before the wedding? My lawyers already filed the divorce papers." She flipped through the papers in a panic. "This can't be legal." "It's airtight," I said. "Every account you tried to drain, already secured. Every asset you thought you could hide under James's name, traced back to you." Her fingers trembled as she opened her banking app. I watched the color drain from her face when she saw the balance. "Zero." "You stole from me," she said weakly. "No," I corrected. "I protected what was mine." She sat back heavily on the couch, the fight draining out of her. "You think this is over?" she said after a long silence, trying to rally. I smiled. "Oh, Natalie, This was just the financial part. She looked up sharply. There's still the social part, and that's going to hurt a lot worse. I left her sitting there staring at the empty walls of the house she was about to lose. And I wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot. The next morning, Natalie woke up to her world on fire. I sat at the kitchen table, calmly scrolling through my phone while she paced the living room, her voice rising and falling as she made frantic phone calls. "What do you mean I'm suspended?" she cried into the phone. You can't do this." I sipped my coffee and waited. The posts had gone live at 6 a.m., timed perfectly. Photos of Natalie and James, caught in compromising positions. Screenshots of their flirtatious, mocking conversations about me. Even the receipts from their little weekend trips, all neatly posted by anonymous accounts that, somehow, found their way into the right hands. Our friends, her co-workers, her family. Natalie's perfect little image, the one she spent years curating, shattered in less than an hour. I could hear her phone buzzing nonstop, message after message. Some calls she answered, most she didn't. It didn't matter. The damage was done. By lunchtime, her sister had blocked her. Her parents stopped returning calls. Her best friend, who once swore loyalty to the grave, sent a single text, "Don't ever contact me again." Natalie stood in the middle of the living room, her hands shaking, staring down at the screen like it could somehow undo everything. She turned toward me, eyes wild. "You planned this," she said. It wasn't a question. I shrugged. "Actions have consequences. You're just not used to facing them." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No pity, no regret. This wasn't cruelty. It was justice. "You destroyed my life," she whispered. "No," I said, standing up and sliding my phone into my pocket. "You destroyed it the moment you let James through our door. I just made sure everyone else saw it too." She sagged onto the couch, defeated, her phone slipping from her fingers. It buzzed one last time. Her boss's number. First they suspended her. Now they were finishing the job. I didn't need to hear the conversation to know what they were going to say. By the time she hung up, her job was gone too. And Natalie. She was officially completely alone. That evening there was a knock at my bedroom door. Her voice came through small and broken. "Derek, please, can we talk?" I opened the door slowly. Natalie stood there looking nothing like the woman who once smirked at me over dinner. Her hair was a mess. Her skin was pale. Her eyes were bloodshot. She clutched the edge of the doorframe like she needed it to stay upright. "Please," she whispered. "I have nowhere to go." I leaned against the door and crossed my arms. "You chose James," I said quietly. "Remember?" Her face crumpled. "He won't even answer my calls. He's gone. Everyone's gone." I said nothing. Let her words hang there. "I made a mistake," she said, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I was stupid. I thought he loved me." I raised an eyebrow. "And you thought I'd just sit here waiting for you to figure it out?" She shook her head, desperate. "I'm sorry. I swear I didn't mean for this to happen." I stared at her for a long moment, long enough for her to start hoping. Then I said calmly, "Not my problem." I started to close the door. She grabbed the edge of it, panic flashing across her face. "Please, Derek, please, don't do this to me." I pried her fingers off one by one. "You did this to yourself, Natalie," I said. "You just didn't think you'd ever have to pay for it." She collapsed to her knees right there in the hallway, sobbing, but I didn't stay to watch. I shut the door gently, locked it. Then I walked back across the room, laid down on my bed, and closed my eyes. For the first time in a long time, I slept peacefully. Natalie had made her choices, and now she could live with them, alone. A week later, the house was mine again. Natalie was gone. She packed what little she had left and slipped away one afternoon without a word. No goodbye, no note, not even a text. I stood in the living room that evening, the last light of the day sliding across the hardwood floors, breathing in the silence. It felt good. No tension in the air, no lies hiding behind fake smiles. Just peace. The divorce papers were already filed, clean and uncontested. She got nothing, exactly as the prenup said. No money, no house, no spousal support. Not even the car. I had made sure of that. I heard through the grapevine that James was denied bail. His history was worse than even Lucas had initially dug up. A long, ugly list of scams, frauds, and one pending assault case. Natalie tried staying with a few old friends, but nobody wanted the scandal attached to them. She bounced from couch to couch, burning every last bridge she had left. She reached out once, maybe twice. A missed call, an email begging for help. I didn't answer. She was just a ghost now. A lesson. I set my phone down and pushed my chair back. I walked out onto the porch, sipping my coffee, feeling the crisp morning air. The neighbors waved. Friendly. Normal. Life, moving forward the way it should. I thought back to that night at the dinner table, the way she smirked at me, so sure she had everything under control. She thought I would beg, or cry, or fight for her. Instead, I smiled and walked away. And that had been the beginning of her end. Sometimes people think betrayal is a moment, one sharp cut. But really, it's slow. It rots. And by the time it shows, it's already too late to fix. Natalie never understood that. I finished my coffee, leaned back in my chair, and watched the sun climb higher in the sky. Not with bitterness, not with anger. Just peace. The kind you earn the hard way. Thank you for watching.